Good morning, Rittman Grace Brethren Church. How are we doing this morning? Is everybody awake? Does everybody have their coffee? All right, good stuff. Well, good morning. Hope everybody is having a good weekend so far. Nothing like the time change. I know me and my wife, we tend to overcompensate. At least I know I did. I get a little bit worried that I'm not going to get enough sleep, so I ended up going to bed way earlier than what I usually do. So I actually had like a normal amount of sleep last night, which was amazing. So I'm sure you really cared. But my name is Clark, and I'm one of the leaders on our staff. If I haven't met you, or if I haven't met your family yet, I'd love to meet you. So feel free to stick around in the lobby after service while your car's heating up. Love to get to know you a little bit, or just catch up with you if we have met. So I hope everybody is doing good, though. We are going to be continuing our current sermon series that we have been in called The 7 Signs in John's Gospel. And just to recap a little bit what we said last week, if you were here, you might remember we said that John, the author of this New Testament book of the Bible, he wants us to know who Jesus is. He wants us to see that Jesus, his identity is that he is the Son of God. Jesus, in the Gospel of John, this book of the Bible that we're studying together, Jesus performed a number of these things called signs, these miracles. We asked the question last week, what does a sign do? What is the purpose of a sign? A sign points beyond itself to something more important, to something more significant. So when we read about Jesus doing these miracles, whether it's him turning water into wine or whether it's him walking on water, we need to ask the question, what is this sign? What is this miracle actually pointing us to? What is it signifying? What is the bigger and more important question that this is showing us? And we said last week as well, once we ask this question, the details of the story start to matter in new ways. If we want to know the purpose of the signs in the Gospel of John, we need look no further than the end of this book of the Bible in chapter 20, verse 30 to 31. John actually tells us the reason for these signs. He says, Jesus performed many other, here it is, signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book, but these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. And we said this, in other words, when it comes to these signs, there's more here than what meets the eye. They're perceived with the eyes of faith. In other words, not everyone is going to see these deeper realities through these signs. It's going to be through the lens of faith that we can see these deeper realities that God gives us in his word. And we get that faith, of course, through Jesus. And that's what this series is all about, this study. My hope and prayer is that it is a life-transforming discovery, whether we're somebody who follows Jesus or whether we're someone here or watching online investigating Jesus. We get to see how these different miracles reveal the person of Jesus, because all the signs will ultimately point to him. Last week we looked at John chapter 2, where Jesus turns water into wine, and today we're actually going to look at the second sign where Jesus heals a royal official's son. But before we do that, let me ask you a question. How many of you, by a show of hands, use the internet? How many use the internet? My guess is quite a few people. We live in the 21st century now. The internet is really helpful for a number of different things. I honestly think it's really helpful when it comes to researching. I think it's a gift from God. When it comes to studying the Bible, when it comes to preparing sermon messages, I know I like to use the internet a ton. It's chock full of different journals, different articles and blogs and videos. You could basically travel on the internet, if you think about it. You can go anywhere just by just by searching. You can find reviews. You can basically plan your entire vacations from the internet. But in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, the best part of the internet, I think the reason that it truly exists, is the mind-numbing, goofy videos that we just spend way too much time watching when we just need a good laugh. And I'll just tell you, the ones that I think are the best, when I just search random YouTube videos, I love the ones that involve goats and sheep. Goats that yell like humans, and sheep that just run and fall over when they get scared. I don't know if you've ever seen those videos on YouTube, but they are amazing. when I just need a quick laugh. And this probably tells you something about me. Maybe you will resonate with this, or maybe this will cause you to run away from this church. But I love watching the videos of the yelling goats and just the fainting sheep. If you've never seen the yelling goats, it's just the way their tongues come out and the way their mouths open in goofy ways. I don't know what it is, but I find it really amusing. And then you have these sheep that are just running around and being chased by something, and then all of the sudden, they just collapse and they fall over. And it just like plays possum immediately. And it could be on the side of a hill and just start rolling down a hill. And when you watch these sheep, they kind of do that fight or flight. They have these fight or flight tendencies. And they definitely have more of that flight tendency where they run and they just will like freeze and stop. And I mention that because I think sometimes, as strange as it sounds, sometimes I think we adopt that strategy in our own lives. Well, we will do the flight and freeze. Some of us can really relate to that, I think. When life gets frantic, we try to run from it and we can't run from it. So what do? We end up just freezing. Here's the question I want you to consider this morning. Where do you turn when life gets hard? Where do you turn when things get hard? Where do you go when you're overwhelmed? Where do you go when you don't know what to do, how to solve something? What do you believe is going to help you? I think the common denominator that all of us share in this room and those watching online is that at one point in our lives, we are all going to face something that is going to be too big for us to handle. And fortunately, this morning, right here, right now, the Bible gives us real answers to these kinds of questions. Because today we're going to look at a passage that is all about belief. It's about faith and where we believe we can go to help us when things go wrong. Specifically, I want to look at 3 reasons that you can place your faith in Jesus. There's definitely more than 3, but I want to give you 3 out of this passage. So if you have a Bible, I want to invite you to turn with me to the Gospel of John chapter 4. The Gospel of John chapter 4, and we're going to break in at verse 43, which says this. After the 2 days, he left for Galilee. Now Jesus himself had pointed out that a prophet has no honor in his own country. When he arrived in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, for they also had been there. Once more he visited Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine. And there was a certain royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. So we want to look at 3 reasons that we can place our faith in Jesus. If you're taking notes, here's the first one. You can place your faith in Jesus because he hears your cries of desperation. He hears your cries of desperation. Notice what the text tells us, starting in verse 47. When this man heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. Unless you people see signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you will never believe. The royal official said, Sir, come down before my child dies. Go, Jesus replied, your son will live. And I just want to stop there. So let's talk about this a little bit. We see in this part of the story that something is gravely and frighteningly wrong here. The Bible tells us that there is this royal official, this noble person whose son lay sick. And the Bible tells us that he is actually close to death. And the word that's actually used here in verse 46 is the kingsman or the king's person, or some translations will say the nobleman. And this was not some generic official. This person likely served under Herod Antipas, who functioned as one of the 4 kings over a variety of area. So here's what is fair to make some observations here. It's fair to say that this person was wealthy. It's fair to say that they were exceedingly well connected. And I think it's fair to say that they were powerful. But we also notice something else about this person. This person is desperate. If you think about it, with all the money and with all the connections, with all the power, with all the privilege that comes with this role of being the royal official, he could do nothing to save his son. So we have to assume that before he comes to Christ, that he has tried every imaginable remedy to help his son who is sick. Everything that he could possibly do. This is a desperate story. There's perhaps no deeper pains than the thought of losing a child. So this nobleman, he hears about Jesus, and there's a reference in this story that he is back in the place where he turned water into wine. He performed a sign. He performed a miracle. And if you go back a couple chapters in John, we see that Jesus cleansed the temple. He's done some dramatic things in this area, and the news of Christ is beginning to spread. And this person, this royal official, this nobleman who has money, he has power, he has all the things, all these things that he has, and yet he hears about Jesus as a last resort. So he comes down to him. And there are just some things that money and power can't fix. And it's likely that none of us would have the resources that this person has or would have had from a financial standpoint. We don't all face something as dire as a son on the edge of death, but all of us will face problems that are going to be too big for us to handle. And the question for us is, where are we going to turn when that happens? When things go wrong, where are we going to turn? And before we look at that, where we go for help when things go wrong, I want us to ask a more foundational question. Why do things even go wrong in the first place? Why do things go wrong in the first place? Why do things break? Why don't things go well? And I think to answer that question, we need to do some text work. We need to do a little bit heavy lifting with our Bibles. Verses 43 to 45, I want to review that again. It's a strange series of verses, but notice, after 2 days he left for Galilee. Now Jesus himself had pointed out that a prophet has no honor in his own country. When he arrived in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, for they also had been there. Notice it says that Jesus went down to the place that he knows he's not going to have honor. And then it says that the Galileans welcomed him. That's a strange order of things. Jesus goes down because he is a prophet that has no honor, so he's trying to prove that point, but then the people who are not supposed to honor him, what do? They welcome him. I think the question becomes, why? Why do they welcome him? And the rest of verse 45 tells us. Because they had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover festival. So they welcome him because they saw his signs and his wonders. And that's not inherently bad. But notice how Jesus rebukes in verse 48. Look at verse 48 again. Unless you people see signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you will never believe. The signs and wonders were not necessarily the problem. We keep saying that at the end of the Gospel of John, chapter 20, the signs are meant to reveal who Jesus is, the Messiah, the Son of God, to believe in him, to have life in his name. So the signs are not the issue. Here's the common problem, though. We can settle for Jesus as a miracle worker, but not as a Messiah. We can settle for Jesus as a problem solver, but not as a Savior. That's what we see in this text this morning. I put it in your notes. There's a quote by this guy, Dr. Kenneth Gangle, and he says, sometimes God allows us to experience desperate faith in order to move us towards deliberate faith, a more purposeful faith. The official, the royal official, this noble person, he heard that Jesus, the miracle worker, had come. And he goes to him. Why does he go to him? Because his son was at the point of death. He's in a place of desperation. He has a desperate faith. But God says, I'm going to move you to a deliberate faith. Jesus' words in verse 48, they seem pretty harsh. They seem pretty abrupt. They seem pretty hard at face value. The father comes, he's desperate, he's needy, and Jesus says, unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. If you put yourself in the place of this father with this dying son, one of the things that you might be tempted to think is, where is the kindness of Jesus? Where is the compassion of Jesus? Where is the sympathy of Jesus in this story? And we know from this story that he's going to go on, he's going to heal this royal official's son. So why does Jesus say this to him? Well, again, we get some help from our Bibles here. Something that we don't have in English, but was in Greek, is that the word you being used here is actually plural. And we might say it, and the closest thing in English is probably the word y'all. Everybody turn to your neighbor and say y'all. Y'all turn to your neighbor. I think that's a fun word to say. When Jesus responded, here's the point. When Jesus responded to the royal official's request to heal his son, he responded with the word you being plural. In other words, you could almost read it like this. It sounds funny, but this is probably the closest thing to what we would say it in our language. Jesus is basically saying, unless y'all see signs and wonders, y'all won't believe. So what we can conclude from this is that Jesus' words is not a rebuke to the Father alone as much as it is to the entire community who is consumed with seeing signs and wonders. In fact, Jesus is saying something like this: you are looking for a miracle for healing, but you need something so much more than that. What you need is a Messiah, not a miracle. What you need is a Savior, not a solution. What Jesus is saying here is that you need a different type of healing. So once again, the question we need to ask, the more foundational question, is why do things go wrong in the first place? When you read this, you might go, why is this child sick and close to death? And to do that, we're actually going to zoom out and look at a macro theme of the Bible to try to answer this. I want to share a quote with you from a book called Center Church, written by Dr. Timothy Keller. And I think what he says here is very, very helpful for what we're talking about. It's a little bit longer, so I'll try to read it slow, but here's what he says. Since the garden, we live in a world filled with suffering, disease, poverty, racism, natural disasters, war, aging, death. And it all stems from the wrath and curse of God on the world. The world is out of joint, and we need to be rescued. Now, this next part is really, really insightful. If you get nothing else, then get this. He says, but the root of our problem is not these horizontal relationships, though they are often the most obvious. It is our vertical relationship with God. He goes on and he says, all human problems are ultimately symptoms, and our separation from God is the cause. The reason for all the misery, all the effects of the curse, is that we are not reconciled to God. Therefore, the first and primary focus of any real rescue of the human race, the main thing that will save us, is to have our relationship with God put right again. I think if you don't consider what Dr. Timothy Keller is saying, you might miss what Jesus is actually coming to offer. Jesus is coming to offer a healing that is deeper and higher and wider and longer than all of the hurts, all of the sad things that we experience in this world. This royal official had a sick son, and he rightfully wanted healing for his son. It was the most obvious thing that he needed. It was the most obvious felt thing that he longed to see fixed. But what he asked for was less than what he truly needed. And it's often less than what we need as well. Because we can find ourselves doing the exact same thing that this royal official is doing. And just think about what might prompt us or nudge us towards Christ. If you're a follower of Christ, consider how you began that journey to follow Jesus. Or if you're somebody investigating Jesus, what is the thing that is nudging you towards Christ? What is causing you to lean in and want to investigate Jesus? I'll give you some examples of what I'm talking about. Let me just say on the front end, that as you hear some of these, none of these are a bad thing. Just like the Father's request for healing the Son was right, and it was good. It was a good request that Jesus obviously granted. But it's not the most foundational thing that we need. Some of the things that prompt us to take the same journey that this royal official did in this story, for some of us, it's a personal sense of shame. We have this sense that something is wrong with us, so we need someone to see us, to affirm us, to grant us love. So Christ is the one who pursues us in our shame. For some of us, it's anxiety. We have worry. We have concerns about what is coming. And so maybe for some of us, what compels us to go to Christ is that we see someone who's great. We see someone who's good, and he can deal with the stuff that I don't see coming in life. For some of us, we're confused, struggling with parenting, struggling with relationships, struggling with job decisions. So we come to Christ because we need to see him in his wisdom to teach us and to show us how life works best, which he does. For some of us, maybe we just have concerns, and we are really concerned with what is happening in our world, with the Russia and Ukraine crisis. And we see it as a broken world, and we want somebody to fix it. We want justice. So we come to Jesus because we know that he is the great justice bringer. For some of us, it's sickness. Like in this story that we read today, the father is like, my son's dying, and I need somebody who can heal him. I want you to hear this morning. Jesus wants to address all of that. And he is able to address all of that, and he will address all of that. But he offers us something that we ultimately need. It's not just a solution, it's a Messiah. It's not just a miracle. That's why Jesus says to him, unless you see signs and wonders, you're not going to believe. In other words, he's saying, you want to see my power, but you're missing out on who I am. What the nobleman needed to say is, Jesus, I need you to be my Savior because everything is broken. My son is sick, but my heart is sick, and I need a deep healing. This is exactly what the good news of the gospel gives us. If we turn back to John chapter 3, we see the most famous verse in all of the scriptures. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. Verse 17 goes on to say, for God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. You see what this is saying? Jesus wants to do more than meet our temporary right now needs. He wants to do something more. He wants to grant us life to the fullest. Life that goes on and on and on. That we might experience a healing that is deeper and higher and wider and longer than all of the hurts. But it starts with this reality that Christ came to be a wrath-bearing sacrifice. That the wrath of God was the right judgment on us, breaking faith with him and breaking trust with him. And when we broke trust with God, we broke the world. And Christ is coming to mend it, first and foremost, by reconciling us back to God. And that's why he gave his life for us. That's why he goes to the cross for those who believe. He took the just punishment. He unites himself to us through faith. And he takes the judgment on the cross that we have earned. He takes it for us. He borrows an empty tomb and he rises from the dead on the third day. And then what we're told in the Bible is that we're not merely forgiven. We're not merely purified of our sin and rebellion. You know what we are? We're reconciled back to God. That's why the Bible uses words like adopted, because Jesus comes to fix all of this. He offers a healing that is deeper and higher and wider and longer than all of the hurts. And that's why we're stressing so much in this series to not just look at the signs, but to look at where the signs point to. They point to Jesus as a Savior, not just a problem solver. They point to Jesus as a Messiah, not just a miracle worker. So what do we do with this truth that Jesus comes and he says, Yes, I can heal your son, but I can heal more than you could ever possibly dare to imagine. What do we do with this? Well, let's see what the man with the sick son does with this. And I think what we're going to see is that there's something for ourselves along the way. You can place your faith in Jesus because he hears your cries of desperation. But the second reason that this text gives us to place our faith in Jesus is because his word can be trusted. His word can be trusted. If you're taking notes, you can write that down. That second part of verse 50 tells us the man took Jesus at his word and departed. What we heard in this story is a declaration from Christ. Jesus says, your son will live. And then a response from the man. The man took Jesus at his word and he departed. He left and he went on his way. I don't know about you, but I love that image. There's faith, and then there's what follows as a walk of faith. He believed, but he didn't yet see. The official didn't know if his son was actually going to get healed or not. He believed it. In other words, he hoped for it, but he hadn't yet embraced his son in his arms to see that the fever had left, to see the life come back into his eyes. He has to go on this journey from what Christ has said that he was going to do. And there's something in that for us too. Because most of our lives, we're spent walking from one promise of God to the next promise of God. Most of our lives are spent in the last little part of verse 50. The man took Jesus at his word and departed. In other words, Jesus says, this is how it is. And then we're walking on this journey where we don't quite see it yet. Learning how to walk with faith is one of the most practical, life-giving, life-altering things that we can do. So let's spend some time talking about how this man took Jesus at his word. In other words, how he believed. Some of your translations say the word believed. Believed the word that Jesus spoke to him. He didn't just have faith. He believed the word that Jesus had spoken. That word believe literally means to relax into. In the midst of worries, in the midst of calamities, in the midst of confusions in this walk of life, from what I've said, Jesus is saying, until you get to see it, we're to relax into Jesus. Jesus wants all of our weight to lean into him. And I think that's a really great picture of how our faith can work as we walk. I think one of the most amazing things about the belief that Christ is inviting us to is that it's primarily a work that he does for us. It's not do, it's not accomplish, it's not performing your way to a better life. It's belief, it's relax. And one of the most amazing aspects of this belief is that our degree of belief or our degree of trust does not determine the strength of the one that we trust in. Our degree of belief, our degree of trust, does not determine the strength of the one that we trust in. The text does not say the man believed. The text says the man believed the word Jesus spoke. Christianity is not have faith. Christianity is have faith in Jesus. And I think that's an important distinction to make. Think about it this way. I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but growing up, my grandpa, he had this pond in his backyard, and in the wintertime, when it was cold enough, it would freeze over. If there would be a fair amount of snow, and if it was cold for a while, the pond would freeze over. And the thing is, it's always that first step out into the ice. You have this question in your head, is this ice going to hold me? In other words, is it thick enough? Is it strong enough? And for somebody like me, I've always kind of been a bigger guy. It needs to be strong. In Ohio, it almost never is. So I would encourage you to not walk out on frozen ice. Now, why tell you that? The reason I tell you that is because of this. The ice doesn't care how much you trust or don't trust. It's either strong enough or it's not. The ice doesn't care the degree of your belief. It just is. You see, Jesus, in doing these signs, is validating his invitation to believe in him as the Christ, the Son of God, the one who offers healing that is deeper and wider and higher and longer than all of the hurts. And as we walk along the way, he is inviting us to step out, as it were, on ice. And here's what Jesus is saying. It's going to hold. I'm always going to hold. I won't break. Whether you barely step out or whether you jump out, Christ is saying, I will hold you as you walk on the way. So Jesus says, go, your son will live. And it's a declaration of what will happen. That's the word that was spoken to this man, and Jesus speaks words to us too. And I want to get to that here in a second. But notice what happens next in the story, verse 51 and 52. It says, while he was still on his way, his servants met with him with the good news that this boy was living. He inquired as to the time when his son got better. They said to him, yesterday at 1 p.m, the fever left him. So again, let's recap. You can place your faith in Jesus because he hears your cries of desperation. You can place your faith in Jesus because his word can be trusted. And now finally, thirdly, you can place your faith in Jesus because of who he is and what he has done. Notice verse 53. Then the father realized that this was the exact time at which Jesus had said to him, your son will live. So he and his whole household believed. This was the second sign Jesus performed after coming from Judea to Galilee. So the Bible tells us that Jesus healed the royal official's son, but that's not all that Jesus did. In this story, we see that he healed the royal official's son, and then the whole household believed. And Jesus did a lot more things than that. His word to the royal official is, your son will live. But Jesus has plenty of words for us to remember as we walk out our walk of faith. In fact, I want to give you two different things that Jesus said that can really help us as when we think about placing our faith in Jesus because of who he is and what he has done. Two different things. When Jesus was on the cross, he declared, it is finished. And at the very end of the Bible, Jesus says in Revelation, I am making all things new. These two things. The first statement is declaring that the way back to God has been opened through Jesus Christ. In other words, Jesus is saying all of your problems at the end of the day, everything else is just symptoms. But the cause of those symptoms is that you're alienated from God. But when Jesus was on the cross and he declared, it is finished, he's saying, through me, I have given you a way back to be reconciled to God. The vertical reality that creates all horizontal brokenness. Jesus says, it is finished. You don't have to look anywhere else. I am the only one that can do it, and I've done it completely. And we get to go on our walk with that. We get to continue this walk by knowing this second statement that Jesus says in Revelation. Behold, I am making all things new. And that second statement foretells of what the world will be. Restored in a new way. The signs Jesus did point us towards faith, but they also point us towards what is coming. The Father, Son being healed here points to a day where death will be no more, and sickness will be no more. And this was a moment where heaven was breaking into earth, on earth as in heaven, rescuing us and inviting us to believe. Jesus is giving us a glimpse of what is to come. In the Lord of the Rings trilogy, it's all about this incredible journey and saga of adventure and challenge. And there's difficulty and there's enemies, there's oppression, there's war, there's all kinds of these different things happening. But after all of these great battles that have been fought and a great battle that has been won, when good triumphs, in the very final book, The Return of the King, there's a character in the book who asks this question: is everything sad going to come untrue? Is everything sad going to come untrue? It's a strange statement, but what he's not asking is, will good things happen? What he's asking is, will the sad things finally disappear? Listen, guys, the Father was asking for healing. Why? Because right now there is groaning, there's sadness, there's struggles, there's difficulty, but it won't always be. The sad things will come untrue. We get to walk on this journey, and the healing of the Son gives us a breaking in right now to say, this is what the world will be. Behold, I am making all things new. A declaration that says it is finished. Jesus offers us a healing that is deeper and wider and higher and longer than all of the sad things, and he doesn't want us to miss it. Jesus says, I'm not just a miracle worker. I'm a Messiah with all the miracles. I'm not just a problem solver. I'm a Savior over your greatest problem. I want to invite the band up, and as they're getting ready to lead us in a time of worship, let me just close with some thoughts here. When we walk with those words, I think some incredible things can happen. And just think about the Father's walk down to his Son. I imagine it being something like, okay, Jesus, he said he could do it. I've heard that he can do miracles. I trust. And then he starts walking, and I just wonder if there was moments of doubt, and then moments of confidence, and then moments of doubt, and then moments of confidence. I think the more that we take these words, it is finished, and behold, I am making all things new, I think it allows us to live now with faith. We get to relax into those promises. That's the invitation of this text this morning. He wanted to send the Father off with a healed Son. He wanted the Father to be healed more deeply, and that's what he wants for us. He wants us to be healed more deeply. That's the invitation of this text this morning. To come to Christ for healing that only he can give. Let's pray together. Well, Jesus, we just want to come to you this morning and acknowledge that you're not just a miracle worker. You're the Messiah. That you're not just a problem solver. You're the Savior. And Lord, forgive us for times where we just want you to fix the stuff going on. That things aren't going the way that we would want them to go. Forgive us for not seeing that you want to heal us in such a deeper, more meaningful way. You want to give us life to the full. And that only comes through you. That only comes through the person and work of Jesus Christ. Lord, we thank you, not just for being able to perform miracles, to show these signs that we're studying, but to be the way, the truth, and the life. To be a wrath-bearing sacrifice in our place, to carry our sins in your body on the cross, and to give us life. Lord, help us to see who you are, your identity as both Christ, the Messiah, Savior of the world, Lord of our lives. We pray this in your name. Amen.